Hello and welcome to another Out of Spec podcast episode. You join me and Jordan. We are talking about the new Mustang Mach E. Is not actually all new. It's just a mid-cycle refresh for the car. And there are a lot of improvements. There are a lot of things that we still wish were improved on the car. And we've had 2 full days to experience and drive the new Mustang Mach E. And I want to talk to our viewers, Jordan, you and I today, about what's good, what's bad. Should you consider this over a Tesla Model Y? Should you consider this over a VinFast VF8? We have a lot that we need to discuss, and a lot of questions, a lot of positive comments, a lot of constructive criticism, as always, from Out of Spec. And we're getting into everything 2024 model year Mustang Mach E. Here we go.
This episode is made possible by the support we get from Fort Collins Kia. If you are in the market for any electric Kia, not only do they never add market adjustments, they will deliver your car to you anywhere in the 48 contiguous states for out-of-spec viewers. More information in the link in the show notes.
Jordan, we were just in Seattle to drive the refresh Mustang Mach E. I think we're putting the name refresh on there. I'm pretty sure Ford doesn't actually call it that, but it is in German, a BMW would say LCI, life cycle impulse. We would say dot two, whatever it is the big mid-cycle refresh of the car. That's how we're going to call it. And there are some major improvements right off the bat, such as high level being faster charging speeds across the board, especially for the standard LFP battery pack. There's more range because of a more efficient, brand new rear drive unit. That's a new in-house designed, developed, and produced permanent magnet machine. IGBT, not silicon carbide, but it's a mass market car. Kind of makes sense. And some other improvements from software as well as packaging. For example, there's no more GT and GT Performance. That's just one option. And GT Performance software upgrade can be applied to any of the GT powertrain models. And so that's pretty cool. Also, they all come with the good seats. And so there's a lot of packaging and trim that has changed. And one last comment is it's not all just new for 2024. It has been some time since I've spent a significant amount of time reviewing Mustang Mach E, since 2021 or 2022. And since then, the team has actually revamped the car in certain areas, which is unusual for an existing automaker to improve the product, year over year or half year over half year. Ford has half-year milestones that they try and improve their vehicles with. That is unusual. It's very usual for the startups, Lucid, Tesla, Rivian, etc. They're doing that on a weekly basis. So there's a lot of good here, but then there's a lot of bad as well, I'm sorry to say, which should come as no surprise to Ford. We were very vocal about how we felt about the car when we attended the event, but there are some key items that need to be in this car that they're aware about, frustratingly, and it's still not in the new Mustang Mach E. So I think let's zoom out. Let's look at model year 2021 to 2024 Gen 1 Mustang Mach E. You and I have both spent a lot of time in many variants of that car. We had the long-term Mach E California Route 1 here for a while. Tell us about that car. What did we like? What did we not like?
I mean, it does a lot of things that people ask for. It's pretty spacious, something like 60 cubic feet of storage space with the seats down. I actually moved into my new house partially using that car, that Route 1, which is actually discontinued now, by the way. That trim is not even an option. But it was a kind of the range trim, right? It was aero wheels and big battery. And was that just rear-wheel drive, I think?
Yeah, just rear drive, big battery rear drive.
So that was the one if you wanted to take it to get to California. But then when you get to a charging stop, you're a little bit disappointed. So that was kind of one of our biggest gripes about the Mach E was just not amazing charging speed. We even saw that with Race to Vegas of like, okay, it had a huge initial range and then the charging speed became a bit of a crux. And even if it would have been funny if we had, switched Patrick and Liv around with you, like you were in the Mustang and they were in the Taycan. It's like you would have been frustrated because you would have been sitting at a charger for much longer than you would have wanted to be. So we thought it was okay. And it was a first-gen car, first-gen EV from Ford. Their big splash into the EV market.
Well, I guess they had the Focus and the Ranger, but mass market. I just knew we would piss someone up. Someone would, one of the nerds in there.
Okay, you nerd enthusiasts. Those were adopted platform type sharing things. This was a ground up EV, skateboard battery and all. And it was kind of the sister EV. Sister's the wrong word, but it and the F-150 were like their big like EV hardcore market wide cars. And it sold well. We found out it was like the second best selling EV in its segment behind the Model Y, and considerably. I mean, this outsold the ID4 slightly, just barely, and then the Model Y was like 3 times that amount. So it's crazy how many people buy the Model Y, and that's what's on a lot of people's minds is how does this compare? A lot of people ask, a lot of people who are Tesla agnostic. They don't care whether they're just like, what EV should I buy? It's like, well, I start asking more questions, and then it becomes harder and harder to recommend the Mach E in some ways to the average buyer. So
I would agree. The standard car was good. We had some issues as well from a performance side. I was never one of the guys to complain about the Mustang badge. It's fine. I was like, okay, but it's got a rip. Like you put a Mustang badge on there, and like, look, I get they made the V6 Mustang, 4-cylinder Mustangs. They weren't that world, Jordan. You had one. They're not all GT 500s or GT 350Rs. Not every Mustang is a hardcore performance machine. But there's always a sporting edge to them, a sporting character, and a certain level of, I think, stigma that comes with the name that an electric car has a lot to go up against, and it needed that performance backing, I think, to handle it. And so even when the Mach E GT trims came, which are the ones that really could show electric, the world what electric could do, we had major power limitations, major. And we've done videos documenting the 5-second power limit. It was never really a time thing. It's a current Coulomb counting situation in and out of the battery pack with lots of protective controls. And we've had software issues as well. We've had lagginess issues, and there have been over-the-air software updates. Ford seems to be supporting the vehicle pretty well throughout the life cycle. And the one thing I do want to point out here is, while Jordan, you and I had we could go on for 2 hours about the issues we had with the early car. I just want a very high level move to the new car. But you and I have had a lot of just little issues that add up to a poor user experience compared to the competition with the old car. A lot of our viewers drive Mustang Mach-Es. My friends drive Mustang Mach-Es, and they don't really notice them. So does that mean that a lot of first-time EV buyers, which is most of the Mach-E owners that I've seen, don't know what they're missing out on in terms of basic functions like showing kilowatt on a charging screen and having thermal performance to actually use a performance car as intended? Or what? I mean, what's your impression of that? Because certainly there are people complaining in the comments, and we met a Mustang Mach-E owner who was a nerd, who was like an out-of-spec guy at like their Friends of Ford dinner, and he, like all of the things, he's like, dude, he told me that in the wintertime he has to choose between heating the cabin or heating the battery because the onboard heater only has enough power to do one or the other. It's 5 kilowatts, and it prioritizes cabin and instead of preconditioning. So like there are Mach-E owners out there who are incredibly frustrated with the car, but most people just seem to be commuting to work in them.
Right. They just commute. It's an appliance. It's a good looking appliance. That's partially, I think, why they sell pretty well. We could name this episode The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but there's not a lot that's ugly. Like it looks pretty decent. But I think a lot of those people just don't care, or they don't notice, or they do notice and just like choose to look past it. And they're like, well, I like these other things about it, so I'll deal with the other things. Like, and maybe they're used to other cars in their history where it was like a mixed bag. Like some things are fine, but it's slow. Like maybe there's used to that, and us enthusiasts are like looking for this perfect car. And that's kind of when we go into reviewing a car, it's like we do go into it objectively, and we try to have no preconceived notion or bias, or like, we don't expect it to being the best thing ever. Like, Ford gives us this presentation saying like this is the best Mustang Mach-E ever made. And we're like, well, it's like the new best iPhone every year. And so we have to look past that, and we also look past our issues with the outgoing car, not ignore them. Like we have that as like a baseline, but it's like, okay, what has been done? What's been better? What's stayed the same? And do you feel like enough has changed?
Well, let's talk about what's changed. So the new car, we're 10 minutes in. What have they done for model year 24? They kept the same battery, which to me
Yep.
initially was a big disappointment because I'm like, well, that was the worst part of the old car, charged like crap. But we learned they redid the entire thermal modeling for the vehicle. So rather than doing Coulomb counting and current in and out of the battery pack, the way it would work before is if you output a lot of energy or inputted a lot of energy, it would just arbitrarily limit the maximum current allowed because something somewhere in a model in a worst case scenario would have gotten hot, and it was very protective. It was almost prototypey in the sense of how they were doing their derating strategy. Now, a lot more of those derating controls have moved to a thermal model with a different onboard controller, which means it's probably not retrofittable, retroactive to the existing cars, which to me is the most disappointing part of all of this. And so, okay, that's interesting. It's cool. It means we're going to get more power for longer, which you do, but it's still not near where the competition gets. We'll get into that. There's the new motor in the rear, which should be more efficient, that have higher thermal longevity, but it's not silicon carbide, it's IGBT, but it's, we mentioned that, but it has to go across the lineup. That's a permanent magnet primary axle e-machine. So that's on every single Mustang Mach E, regardless of the variant, uses the same rear motor. And then the front motor comes in for the all-wheel drive ones and is juiced up for the GT. And what else have they done? They did it's faster. It's 3.3 seconds 0 to 60.
Yeah,
which is faster than Model Y.
Slight boost in horsepower and torque. And then when you do the GT Performance upgrade, that adds more torque. Same horsepower, but more torque. And 3.3 seconds 0 to 60 is blazing. But notably, not really any software improvements. They changed the look of some things, but just the same. I was really hoping for a new computer behind the scenes. Like, when Tesla's got like the new hardware version, you're like, wow, this software rips, which we just take for granted sometimes. But it's like, it's 2024. Why am I tapping a button on the screen and waiting literally 2 seconds sometimes for something to change?
We were with our friends Kim and PJ, who are great people, by the way. So if you don't follow, is it like Tesla or Kim Java, but her channel now and her husband, they're really great people. But this is the first time they've reviewed the Mustang Mach E, and we joined them. We were like, well, we're all EV nerds. We'll just jump in the car with you guys. And it was so interesting watching Tesla owners come into the Mach E with that very Tesla level expectation, which you should, because that is the benchmark in the class, and every car should have software that can match that, in my opinion. And dude, just explain what happened, because it was crazy to witness.
Well, PJ was recording B-roll of different screens. Well, he was trying to, and he was tapping on a button, and then the next button, the next button. Where normally it would like show a new version of the screen, which is great for B-roll, for camera work. We don't know what B-roll is, but over here. But he was putting the buttons just slightly too fast to where it was not refreshing the screen in time. So it was just a blank gray screen the entire way down the menu, because these simple menu items would not load fast enough for him to actually see it. So he thought he was doing something wrong, but really just the car was not fast enough. Because on a Tesla, if you do the same thing, it's just like screen.
Yeah, as fast as you can hit it, it loads up. Honestly, even in the new Volkswagen ID4 with the 2025 updates, it's same as ID7 and Buzz. Those systems rip, and I'm like, surely Ford would have driven something and realized that. They were like, Kyle, did you notice how quick the heated seats respond now when you hit the button? And I was still like, no, because it's still laggy.
It's not quick. So that's a big issue for me. Everyone has their own things they care about more than others. And like, I'm willing, unlike you, like, I'm willing to give up a little bit of performance for like just a great freaking software experience. And it's disappointing to see both being an issue here. And it's like, oh, well, okay, let's give up a little bit of performance for really great charging. And that also didn't really happen.
Okay,
so.
let's not get into the negatives. We're getting there.
Okay.
What else have they improved on the car? So the charging time. Okay, new colors. Who gives a crap? The charging time has gotten shorter. It was well over 40 minutes. Now we're 36.2 minutes, 10 to 80%, which still is not class leading, still is not the benchmark. But then I always think like Tesla sells that 4680 Model Y, or at least did, and that really sucked. So, okay, I don't want to give it too much crap for the charging. I would say it's now finally acceptable, but in no way is it class leading because this has to go up against Ioniq 5 and EV6.
And that's DC fast charging. Now, they also don't show us the rate of charging on the display. They also don't let us
You mean
derate the
when you say that, you mean like it doesn't show you kilowatts. So when you're
kilowatts.
plugged into a Tesla supercharger, which Ford famously is amazing with their network, they have a
First
whole,
one.
they have plug and charge with superchargers, all that stuff. You have literally no idea how fast it's charging unless you pull up the Ford Pass app, which is really nice when you own the car and you got to look at your phone to see real time speed. But when you're borrowing a friend's car or renting one, you have no idea how fast you're charging.
And it's just annoying to pull your phone out just to open an app, just to see how fast you're charging. That should just be right there on the screen. So that's a huge issue. And then with level 2 charging, you can't derate the amperage to accept less current. And like there's some cases where that's an issue. Or in some cases, like notably Patrick and Liv, our friends, they got a bunch of idle fees at this charger because it charged too fast. And if they had just derated it, they would have been fine. And that's when I've used derating in my experience. So
yeah, they used a level 2 that they really should have slowed it down for.
And then you can't set a universal charge limit. You have to do
Wait,
it like
we're on positives, Jordan. We're supposed to get to the positives. I was saying it charges faster, and then you just started hammering
I thought we were
the
just
car.
talking about charging.
Positives, or at least improvements. Braking package rocks, by the way. So, and I want to talk about what we did with the car, and we have a full video coming, but this is just the podcast because we have a Model 3 video that went live today, which is going to outperform the Mustang Mach E video. Unfortunately, I wish it didn't work this way. This is the way the world works, so we want to get our Mach E coverage to our viewers now. The Mach E video will go up tomorrow. And we still have plenty of other videos we need to get up as well. So, other improvements to the car, Jordan, are
technically
range. Range is better.
Range is better on all trims.
But it's the same usable capacity in the battery. So it's just the efficiency. The wheels are half an inch wider on the standard trims, which is nice. Should give it a little bit more response. They fixed the Mach E torque. It no longer bounces on the standard cars. But they actually did that before model year 24. That was like a mid half a year milestone thing that they did, which is really cool that they were updating the car in between the mid-cycle refresh and start of production. So I was glad to see that. Anything else notable come to mind? I'm sure the headlights are all improved.
Yeah, they got rid of the base headlights, a couple new colors, a new bronze package. There is improved Bluetooth connectivity, supposedly. We weren't really able to test that, but and then they're adding EV routing to Android Auto. It's already on Apple CarPlay, but not to all apps yet.
So it's just on CarPlay.
A lot of things are coming down the pipeline. But yeah, definitely some improvements which we'll take. Oh, the frunk is now one piece instead of like a million other pieces.
But that didn't happen for the refresh. That happened.
Right. This is just when they brought it up.
yeah. This is when they told us. And I'm like, that would have been a fun podcast to do last year.
Right. Yeah. So that's, yeah.
Okay. The thermal controls are the most amazing thing to me, that they are finally derating based off of temperature. That's crazy. So let's talk about what we did. We showed up at the event in Seattle. We grabbed a Mach E GT in green. Walk us through the day, Jordan. What did we do? Because there was a lot of really positive and negative things that happened during that day.
Yeah. We took the car through beautiful kind of rural Seattle roads and beautiful greenery. The car looked good. We drove it for a bit on highways. We used Blue Cruise 1.3, which is really quite a great system. That's a huge pro for this car, not specific to this car. Lightning gets it as well, but that was a great positive. Like
does Lightning get it?
I thought it did.
I thought Lightning only got Blue Cruise 1.0.
No, I was told by someone at Ford that Lightning did 1.3 or was coming or something.
They're not updating. Well, we just had the Lightning from them.
Yeah.
And it didn't do lane changes.
No, ours was an older one that wasn't on the new software yet. So, which a lot of people point out.
If the software is out, just put it to the car.
I know. Yeah.
And the model year 24 Lightning shows kilowatts on the screen. Big moves over here. But then the model year 24 Mach E does not.
Are they talking to each other? Are those teams discussing things? I don't know.
Someone tried to explain to me how complicated it was to put kilowatts on the main screen, and they're like, it's in the pipeline. And I'm like, just delay. You already delayed production. You're launching a 24 model year halfway through 24. I mean, that is worth stopping everything for and just figuring out basics. But we're talking about our day today, and we're not getting upset. We're gonna talk. We're talking about Blue Cruise on the highway, which we almost had a Blue Cruise and autopilot sideswipe situation.
Yeah, that was funny. Blue Cruise scooches over though. It's like it's cool. It's good, and
Well, you
we just
explain the Blue Cruise autopilot thing. People want to know what happened. You were driving.
yeah, we were here, and then autopilot was next to us, and autopilot. I don't know. It didn't scooch well for that. I was
Well,
trying to remember
so
what exactly happened.
yeah, we were going around a left corner, and we were slowly making our way to the outside of the lane, like it wasn't turning enough in our car,
Mhm.
and autopilot had turned almost too much in the Model Y. And I'm watching the guy in the Model Y just sit there like this, and it was just some random dude cruising down the road. And then we both like get whoop pretty close to each other,
Yep.
and I'm like, that would have been really funny to have an autopilot and Blue Cruise driver assistance crash.
Yeah, be interesting. We're just along for the ride. So yeah, I mean, it was just a few hours of driving, and we stopped and filmed the walk around the car and stuff, and that's all going to be on the video. But just getting the driving experience in, it was the Mustang Mach E GT with performance upgrades, so we actually did rip it a bit. And what was your impression on that? Because you've spent a lot of time with the prior one that derated very quickly, and they said they addressed it. I don't know. They didn't quite say fixed it. They were like, we improved it.
So most of the improvements to the Mustang Mach-E have not much to do with driving. So we didn't want to spend too much time on the driving portion. We really spent maximum time with the engineers that we could. We had dinners with them. We, spent all day with them, really learning about their development process and understanding what goes on behind the doors at Ford, so that we can better review their vehicles and understand what they were trying to accomplish here. But like Jordan mentioned, the suspension is carryover and common with the pre-refresh to post-refresh. The MagnaRide dampers are tuned pretty much identically between the old GT and the new GT. So the braking package is similar. The driving package is similar, but the juicier rear motor really makes that GT more fun. It gives it this livelier character, this almost oversteery character. You can back off advanced track, not completely, but almost completely off. It says off, and for all intents and purposes, it's pretty much off, but it leaves just some level on there, just to help with drivetrain lash and abuse loads, so you don't smash your half shafts when if you build up too much wheel speed and then you get to a high mu situation, the wheels stop moving. You don't want that load transferring through to the motor mounts and into your drive line. The car felt good, better than the older car. And so, we're coming out of corners and we're like getting a little bit of oversteer and we're getting the brakes on, and still Mach-E has very, compliant bushing settings, and it is a daily driver. It's a very heavy car. And so I wouldn't say it drives, even Model Y performance would be sportier, but the one area of that Model Y or that Mach-E really excels in is the brake pedal with the big brakes. Those brakes are stout. They work great. We were hammering on them until we weren't, because then we derated on power. And this is something that now they're derating based off of thermals. They're derating based off of different calculations than before, but they're derating instead of 5 seconds, maybe 25 seconds. Jordan, I think on a back road, we drove for about 1 to 2 minutes pretty hard. And then we started to see the lines come in. And then we would chill for a minute and they'd back off pretty quickly. And we'd go a little bit and they'd come back in. And we did one thing where we're like, well, let's just test to see how far we can go. We hammered it, regen, throttle, regen, drive the crap out of it. And then it was almost down to no power.
Right. I think this route they gave us, a lot of times they prescribe a route and it's up to you to kind of follow it. And I think it had, some showcases of good MagnaRide, some traffic, so you can't rip it too hard, which I think was hilarious. But we still found places to rip it, and that's where we found the derating. So at least they don't derate just randomly. It's based on sensors, but still too quickly. There's still some clear thermal challenges, and that's just they could have had the mic drop moment with this refresh. They could have they have all the competition. I don't know how many of them are really testing the competition and aware of it, but they have all this data, even just our videos, that they could have watched and studied and be like, okay, here's the things to work on. And they could have done a mic drop refresh, kind of like the Taycan just did. You've mentioned the new Taycan, literally it's just a mid-cycle refresh. And they were like, oh, we were already this good, and now we're better by a lot. They didn't just like up it like a little bit. They're like, we're crazy good now. And I think I wanted this to be a bit more like that. It's supposed to have the Mustang heart. I know you don't like read into the Mustang badge too much, but it's just like Mustang people, I don't know. It's interesting the adoption of this from Mustang purists or not.
So from the performance standpoint, you bring up a direct competitor, Ioniq 5N, costs more money, No question. Ioniq 5N is more. It's another 10 grand. Nears makes no difference on top of this car. But they're both performance electric SUVs. Model Y, less money than the Mach E. By the way, we haven't mentioned yet, no version of the Mustang Mach E qualifies for the tax credit.
Yeah.
At all, which is a bummer. Every version of the Tesla Model Y qualifies for the tax credit. Is that true?
It's hard. I think so. And the Model Y does just so many things directly better. Even
a lot of
storage
people just
capacity.
won't buy a Model Y out of principle.
Mhm.
So you can just deal with thermal derating in your Mach E. I don't know what else to say.
The software, it's just everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I'm pretty pro Tesla because they develop a complete package. And you can't even give the build quality. Like you can't, this Mach E rattled more than any modern Tesla I've been in.
Yep.
I mean, it's about what my Cybertruck feels like, but that's got 13,000 miles on it now. And it was better than my Cybertruck, I'll give it that. But there were 3 distinct loud rattles in this new prepped Mustang Mach E, which is unusual. And I've not experienced that in other Mustang Mach E's. So I'm not sure if these were just pre-series cars that, lived a rough life. Who knows? I let the Ford people know. I'm like, hey, this car rattles. Check it out. They were like, oh, wow, we hadn't heard that. I'm like, okay, sure. That's fine. But let's get back to the performance driving because it's a GT. It needs to be fun. Brakes were good. Steering, it's okay for what it is. Very basic steering system. Suspension, I thought was fine. It's a firm ride. We really dig into this in our videos. And for most people, this is going to be the fastest, most fun, best handling vehicle they've ever been in. Our jobs are to drive the competition and compare this to the competition and try and make companies better, make cars better, have engineers watch our content and have it improved. It is the clear middle bottom of the pack-ish in terms of driving performance in the electric SUV segment. I can't wait till we get them all on track and do like a big SUV of the year comparison. But the problem here is you just can't rip on it for a long time.
Yeah. And that makes it hard to recommend because okay, it doesn't get performance completely nailed, it doesn't get charging completely nailed, doesn't get software completely nailed. Like there's not much that it does excel at. There's also nothing that's like crazy bad. Like it is a car that a lot of people would get in as a rental or whatever, or even buy one, and they're fine with it. But like you said, it's our job to really push the limits, find the edge cases, and that's where it kind of just fell apart throughout the day. Like just gradually throughout the day, we were like, oh wait, and this isn't like perfect, and this isn't better, and this isn't like.
And Jordan, you and I, especially me, annoyed the absolute crap out of all of the engineers because I went through the list that I'm like, okay, so when I navigate to a charging station and the battery's going to preconditioning, why don't you show a message on the screen that says the battery's preconditioning? And then if it's cold outside and the cabin is cold, why don't you show a message that said battery preconditioning actually isn't going to happen because we're giving all of the battery heating to the cabin? Why don't you show that? And then the list goes on and on. Like, why don't they show kilowatt rate on the screen? Why can't you set a global state of charge limit? Why can't you do all these things? And the one saving grace of all of these complaints, Jordan, was that mostly everyone, especially the folks that are in charge of the model line and how the cars were run, they all knew what we were talking about. They're like, yeah, we know.
They were aware, and they kept saying words like pipeline. What else was it?
Right, it's on the pipeline. It's on the list.
Roadmap.
On the roadmap. But I'm like, this was your roadmap. This was your mid-cycle refresh. This was the moment to show the world that you have driven a competitor electric vehicle and understand what it does well. And then you made your car, you brought all the good pro Ford stuff that you do amazingly well with all of the stuff you learned from driving the competition or just any electric car and just even Mach E's for a while. And then you made it a holistic package from someone all the way from getting into their first electric car to transitioning out of a Tesla Model Y and into a Mustang Mach E because Elon tweeted something that pissed them off and now they're getting into your Ford. That's the gamut of people that are going to buy this car. And it needs to support everyone equally well. And the competition does. Yeah. And this does not. And it's crazy.
Notably, the competition that we keep bringing up are smaller companies, more quote unquote forward thinking, almost startup minded companies like Tesla, Lucid, Rivian. they seem to get a lot of these things, and they're able to implement it, maybe because they don't have quite all the rigmarole, red tape, checks and balances of the huge, slower moving, quote unquote,
Except think
legacy.
Hyundai.
You're right. I mean,
That's what makes your theory go out the window. They're a huge company.
okay, American companies. I don't know why, but
Why? The car's built in Mexico.
Ford and GM are both having some issues with really, like GM, for example, couldn't show state of charge on any of their displays. And they're like, oh, we added it to one. It was like a bunch of meetings and it took a while, but we finally got it to one display. And it's like, why? That would have been such a fast.
Would you agree with me that the GM software is better than the Ford?
Oh, yes.
Isn't that
definitely.
crazy?
And that's not what I expected to happen. I think, I just despise using Ford's mapping software. Software speed aside, just their mapping.
Every time you put in a destination, it says this thing. It it starts talking, even though it's on mute.
Yeah. So GM, I think, did a pretty smart move in partnering with Google, but then they got rid of CarPlay, which annoys some people. But it's like, if you have a good software stack, you don't need CarPlay. That's maybe my hot take. You don't even have many cars with CarPlay because you have a lot of cars with good software. So my
Polestar has CarPlay. My Golf has CarPlay. That's the one I actually use it in my Golf because I really hate the software in that. It's like an old, $3,000 e-Golf. I use CarPlay in that.
Right.
But watch our Mach E GT review when it comes out. It basically is the car could have been so good, and they have definitely improved it from the previous one. Why is it not better? And that brings me to my last point that, Jordan, I think we really need to ask Darren Palmer about when he comes on the show, if he's still willing to come on the show after our review. I really hope he is, because I like Darren. I like the people at Ford. I love the engineers. We had such a good time with them, nerding out, chatting, learning. I learned so much from them, and I hope they learned a little bit from us as well as to how important these topics are for EV drivers, and which will eventually become the total driving population in just a matter of years. So they really got to get their what in order here from a EV holistic design package. Every issue we brought up to Ford, they knew about, like you mentioned, roadmap, product map, whatever. They're like, yeah, it's on the list. What is happening at the engineering department at Ford for them to know about these clear major shortcomings? Thermal issues, communications to the customer issues, app functionality compared to the rest of the competition, notably Tesla, dog mode. I mean, things that are so easy to just go on a list and say, we need to just match what the other guys are doing at a bare minimum. What is happening in the engineering department that goes, we know about all these things, but we chose to not include them in this car for whatever reason? Is it budget? Do they not have the budget to make the car better? Is it the lack of engineering talent where they don't have the software engineers? They don't have the processes in place to build a competitive vehicle in 2024? Is it just a lack of effort? Is it we're going to save all of that for our T3, for our ground up electric truck that's coming out in the future? Kyle, trust me, we have a whole Skunkworks team. We've locked them in a back room to make the next car better. But I'm like, what about this car that people are buying today? It's not better. And it's so personally frustrating to see a company I want to see succeed so well, and a car I want to love so much because I love the people behind it. And we're friends with the Mach E engineering people. Like, we know these people. And the car just isn't where it needs to be. What is happening at engineering to let it get to this point where a mid-cycle refresh is omitting a list of at least 50 items we could easily give to them and say, your car needs to do these at minimum?
How are they not as upset as us? I don't know. If I technically went to engineering school, and it's like, if I was involved in a project and it was just, I could see all the ways that it could be better and it wasn't, and it's my team, I would be just so bummed. And so, I know it's our job to really compare it and contrast it with everything else, but it's like, if I want the answers to all these questions as well. And so I'm really curious to see what their team says. Obviously they say random wishy-washy things at some of these events, and a lot of them are media trained for that, but it's like, if we can get to the root cause, which in this case may just be talking to Darren and some of the really architectural people to figure out what's missing and why. And
Yeah,
I was
like, is it a
satisfied with
lack
the
of
answer.
communication where the engineers who feel like these issues are important cannot convey to the upper management that these are things that are needed to be in the vehicle? Is it the fact that when they designed the Mustang Mach-E, it just wasn't built to support all of these functions? And if that's the case, re-engineer it for the mid-cycle refresh. Like, build the best possible car you can. Because right now it seems that the most people that buy Mustang Mach-E's, it's their first electric car, or it's their first modern electric car. They're coming from a Bolt or a Leaf or a, e-Golf or something like that. And they're like, wow, look at all these things that it does. It's amazing. Like, and they just don't know what it's like to live with a truly cohesively engineered product. And to compete with Rivian R2, which this car is going to have to go up against in the near future, to compete with Tesla Model Y, which is not working at the moment because the Model Y is selling 3-1.
Yeah.
These items need to be the backbone of the Mach-E, because it needs, if the nerds don't like it, if the reviewers don't understand it, or I understand why certain items are missing, like, that will eventually trickle down as public knowledge of EVs comes up. This car's shortcomings will only be exemplified. And I think our industry is doing this car a disservice because most every journalist at this event had no idea what we were talking about. They're like, yeah, the car drives great. You put it in drive and go. They didn't even know, like, they won't even know, like, where should kilowatt be? Should you show the power coming into the port or into the battery? How should Blue Cruise communicate things to you? These are not topics that automotive journalists are experts in. Even though they are paid experts in automotive, they are not, most of them, paid experts in EV. And I don't think a lot of them possess that driving knowledge of many other electric cars, like you do, like Francie does, like I do, like my dad does, like Bjorn does, and others. They don't possess that knowledge to critically evaluate the vehicle. And so I'm sure every other review you're going to read of this car is like, wow, Ford made the best electric car better. But
Yeah.
clearly it's leaving so many things out that are so important to people. We even met a Mustang Mach-E owner at the event who was so frustrated with his car. He's like, I've only driven Fords my whole life. He was a Friends of Ford program. He's like, I'm here just so I can try and talk to the engineers and say, I want to do this and this and this and this. And he's very active in the Ford Mustang Mach-E community. Maybe we can even have him on the podcast at some point soon. Really super guy. But he was just as disappointed as I was in a lot of the things here. And what's crazy, Jordan, is the PR people. We love them. They're great. They don't know what the heck we're saying. They don't get it because they're not, this isn't their world. Like, they're representing their car. They're showing how it's better than the previous generation. We need to see how it's better than the competition.
Right. It's I hope a lot of this EV knowledge trickles into more of the crowd and the drivers, and I think it will. Like, this is becoming more and more commonplace gradually, and I don't know. I wanted to be more excited than I was. And Ford, to their credit, great event, and they built a beautiful car. And I am fundamentally worried about the used market on these cars because, like with what's an iPad, for example, you buy that, day one is the fastest that software is going to run. Consecutive years, updates that bring more functionality will restrict the hardware the software is built on more and more. It'll just slow down over time. That's what happens with all of our tech. And so it worries me that the software is this slow on day one. There are some of these things we've been talking about this whole episode, which we should probably wrap up, is things that can be fixed with over-the-air updates. Other things are not. They're going to be hardware issues or hardware limited, I should say. And so I'm worried about, what's a 5-year-old Mustang Mach-E? How's that comparing to 5-year-old competition? It's already struggling with the competition now, but like looking to the future, I think as more and more of the population become EV aware, they're going to see this car and in a few years and be like, oh, that was not that good. So that's where I'm at. So
Yeah.
final thoughts.
Let's wrap this up, which is, okay, you want to buy a electric SUV. Why do you buy a Mustang Mach-E? Well, the price is quite expensive and it doesn't get the tax credit. So you're going to rely on dealer incentives when they come up for sale. So if you want the range, this starts to make sense to me, right? The range is very good.
Yep.
If you want charging performance, you buy an Ioniq 5. If you want driving performance, you buy a Tesla Model Y, which a refresh is right around the corner, by the way, or an Ioniq 5N, but you're going to spend up for that. And really, those would be the ones that would perform better. There's really not a hot version of an Aria, or I mean, maybe Polestar 2 Performance certainly is a much better performance driving car. That could be, but it's a much smaller vehicle as well. But there's some good deals to be had out there. If you want comfort, I don't know. What do you think?
ID4 is pretty comfortable.
ID4 is very comfortable, and the new software in the ID4 solves almost all of my issues with that car. Still has a weird brake pedal, but like other than that, ID4 it charges pretty well. I mean, damn, that's such a good car for when it came out. I really praised that car. The updates bring it back to like, okay, yeah, ID4 gets it on many items, on route preconditioning, all that stuff that works pretty well. Plug and charge.
You know what charges better than this? That's more comfortable and way cheaper. Is the 5-year-old e-tron.
Well, so that was the joke that when I came back home and I don't know, I saw some friends like, "What do you think of the new Mustang Mach E?" I'm like, "Well, they've matched 2019 Audi e-tron." and maybe and it's way more expensive than that car. But then okay, so for comfort I could see Mach-E, like I personally don't fit in that car really well. I much prefer the seats with massaging in ID4 and all of that stuff. For driver assistance, I could see an argument that Blue Cruise is great. Maybe the Blazer having Super Cruise is someone else's preference, but like Blue Cruise works pretty well. But for software, it's the clear choice is the Model Y. With the app integration, you can text someone the key to your car. That's one of my favorite features.
Amazing.
Has dog mode, keep climate on, all these little things, which is really nice. We figured out a way to keep climate on in GM vehicles, but it leaves the whole car on. Anyone can just break a window and drive away in it. And then really the only car that I'm seeing that like I wouldn't choose over this in almost any category is the Nissan Aria.
And the VinFast. VinFast has pet mode, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
there's upcoming episode with updates from the VinFast world with Francie. Stay tuned.
the VinFast has way more features than the Mach-E.
Crazy heads-up display. Yeah. So
okay, so the question is, how is this the second best-selling EV in its segment? And to me, it's clearly price, styling, marketing.
Yep.
And the Mustang name. It is not because it is a better package than the other vehicles on sale. I hate to say it, but it's true.
Yeah.
From a car reviewing standpoint, from someone who lives with cars, buys a lot of cars, reviews a lot of cars, there are many other vehicles in segments that do much better than this. So if styling is, number one choice, get a Mustang Mach-E. Because I think this is one of the better looking ones. Aria looks pretty good too, actually.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah. That's all subjective, though. So, final thoughts, Jordan, other than it could have been so much more for a mid-cycle refresh. This should have been the benchmark. They had the opportunity to wipe the floor of the Tesla Model Y, and they just didn't even get close.
That's it. This whole episode is my thoughts, but my final thought, I'm not mad. I'm disappointed.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the Ford people know it too, because we hammered the crap out of everyone. Not because we wanted to be like, haha, look how bad. It's because we truly want the car to be better.
Explain yourselves.
I've never felt so disappointed in reviewing a car. You're totally right. In the fact that I'm like, I just know you guys can do better. Like, can we throw some more money at you? Or like, can we help? What do you need to make the car a complete package?
We could do some validation testing. Yeah, you're right. So,
I mean, I would love to. If they had brought us in, I made a whole video about here's just the features that it needs. Like a year and a half ago. They could have just watched that and said, oh shit, these are the things it needs. No, They didn't even make it in. So obviously they don't value our coverage. They don't value what we have to say because we've been saying this all along.
Yep. So,
and the problem is the owners, maybe it's not a problem, but the owners don't seem to know what makes a good or bad EV, and they're just buying them and they're driving them.
Yeah. As long as you like what you drive, but man, there's a lot of ways this could be improved. So I don't know. If you're, we got to wrap this up, but if you're an owner, if you're a potential owner, genuinely just let us know in the comments. Like I'm really intrigued where all of you all are at, but know where
our friend Patrick and Liv, we love them. They're great people, but I can't figure out the love of the Mach-E.
It's a great blue color.
Yeah, the car looks good, and it's got great owners. The owners of Mach E are amazing people. Like so
That's
many
true.
of our friends drive Mustang Mach E's.
Yep.
Are they just blind to the competition? I don't know. I got to start asking them. I don't want to be mean though. As long as
Right.
they're happy with their car and they're getting from A to B safely, reliably, comfortably, what does it really matter at the end of the day?
Yep. All right. Well, thanks for watching another Out of Spec podcast and full-fledged thoughts with Kyle and Jordan. And our video is dropping soon, next day or two, and that's more thoughts.
And the
With
rally
footage.
coming. We can talk about the rally, which is
The rally
really-
is.
we can't
Yeah.
say. Rally
Just
looks
gotta
great.
Stay tuned. All right. We'll see y'all next time.